different ways you walk. Like, different ways you can walk in life. Like, some people get hurt and they limp in life. Some people, like my niece that had cancer, she'll never have her left leg unless God completely heals her left leg, because they amputated her left leg 4.5 inches above her knee. She had sarcoma cancer in her kneecap. She wears a prosthesis. She'll never walk the same. People that have been in accidents, people that have been maybe scoliosis, curvature of the spine. Anybody know what I'm talking about? There are some people that, right? And there's different ways you walk. There's people that walk in life maybe with bad feet and they walk crooked, and maybe some people moonwalk. Some people moonwalk. Some people walk into life backwards, like literally backwards, because that's their whole life. Some come from the side of the track of, like, I've been around young people in my life that are from the inner city, and they're from the deep inner city, where they're crack babies. They're babies that have been raised all their life with parents that were heroin addicts, crack addicts, and their walk in life is always defensive. Their walk in life is always about somebody trying to hurt them. Does anybody know what I'm talking about? Yeah. Have you ever been on a missions trip?
Yes.
You go on a missions trip, there's a totally different walk. Totally different walk. Let me give you the story, and then I'll go into let your walk be your talk. Because there's sometimes the bruises and the pains of a walk that you'll have in life that will learn to be your talk. It'll learn to be your speaking platform. It'll learn to be your testimony. I was in San Francisco, and I was in a place called Asbury Park, and it's where all the hippie movement happened. It's where people used to smoke dope and get high. In fact, they still do. And I took a missions trip there, and we were allowed to bring our Bibles, but we were not allowed to bring our Bibles on the streets of San Francisco. We literally lived, when they brought us there, they said, here's what's going to happen. Get a backpack, get your things, get all the stuff you're going to sleep in, and go with us. We're going to go under the bridges of San Francisco, and there are 2 camouflage buses. I'm like, what? There are 2 camouflage buses, and they have bunk beds in them. Like, they've been gutted out, and they have bunk beds. And there's a sheet in the center of the bus that where the ladies will sleep on the back of the bus in bunk beds, and the gentlemen will sleep in the front. And I was like, what? And they said there's not restrooms right outside the front of the bus. In the front of the bus there'll be porta-johns. They were really nice though. They were the nice porta-johns with like the generator, and it was warm in there and stuff. And so it was really cool. And yeah, you got it. Yeah. And so what happened was we would have to go out of the bus, use the porta-john, unlock the door, come back in. We were on the streets of San Francisco. We were there where there were crack addicts and there were homeless people all over the place. And the bus was painted all this camouflage, but you could see it. I mean, it was just like wild. And I was like, I can see the bus. Well, don't look at it. Okay? But we're sleeping on this bus. We're doing this ministry. We're handing out food everywhere we go. We're handing out sandwiches all over to the homeless, the people that have nothing. So we go through the ministry a day, and at night we had to stay up in 2-hour shifts and sit in the front of the bus looking out for 2.5, 3 hours, and then somebody would say switch, and then they would watch for 3 hours through the night so that you didn't have all this, yo, dude, you got any like crack in there? You got any drugs in there? You'd be like, listen, get away from the bus, man. What's wrong with you? It's like, I can see you guys in there. It's like, good, keep moving. I'm gonna call the popo. Oh, my God, okay, good. And then they would leave. Okay, this is what they entrusted me with all week with my kids, when at home they're thinking they're just doing ministry. They don't know they're living like this. And I ain't saying nothing. You know what I'm saying? What's in San Francisco stays in San Francisco. So we're doing all this ministry thing. Well, one day I was in the park, and all these guys are playing their guitars. We didn't have the cajoons back then. We had the congas or the bongos, you know what I'm saying? And so they had different drum set, and they had a whole set. And we're playing and playing. They're smoking weed. And it's blowing everywhere. I've never been high in my life until that day. I mean, so I'm playing. The guy goes, hey, dude, you. And I'm looking, I'm like, you talking to me? You. Because I didn't know who to talk to. They all getting high, like, what's that? And I was like, yeah. They said, can you play? I said, yeah, I play percussion. Come on over here. So I was like, dude, you want to play? So I start playing. They're like, yo. So they start striking up, and I'm going. Now they're smoking weed, and I'm like, I'm going crazy. Like, I'm getting higher than the car. I'm like, wow! I'm seeing things I never saw before. I'm seeing stuff I never saw. I'm like, oh, Jesus. I'm playing. All of a sudden, I hear this. And I'm like, because I know my wife. I got a whistle, but she's got a whistle. My wife, I could be anywhere. I'd be like, My girl's like this. Why you gotta be like that, man?
Sorry.
Don't say that about my wife.
Okay, I apologize.
So thank you. So she's not a dog, so, but she has a little one like this. And so I'm like, I know it's her because it goes out. It's like a balloon. So I hear her and she goes, hey, come on over here. And I'm like, what's going on? Hey. I didn't want to leave. I was like having fun. So they pull me over and they said, listen, everybody's ready to go. We're all ready to go. We're waiting for you, but because you're like a circus over there, we got to go. It's getting dark, but we lost one of our kids. I'm like, you lost what? Now, that right then, I didn't care. PJ, I was like,
I've lost a few.
well, I was like, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
I feel lost right now. It was bad. It was like, ah,
Lulu.
and so they get me out of the park.
Lulu.
And they said, Andrew's missing. Listen, I know you got that kind of hair, but my boy Andrew had that. And it was in the 90s. This is back in the 90s. Well, no, it's like 2001, 2002. And he has a head of hair like that. And I'm like, how could you lose Andrew? I could see that from a mile away. This is what's really cool. Tonight you reminded me of my Andrew. And I'll tell you what's really cool about this, because I know you have ministry in your heart. This was an incredible story. I'm looking for him. They're like, we lost him. We can't find him. I said, are you sure? And somebody walked up to us and said, out of nowhere, and said, I don't know who you're looking for. There is a young man that is in the leper colony of San Francisco. And I'm like, leper what? No, there's a colony in San Francisco of leprosy. People that are very sick, and they have this skin disease, and they have this stuff. Anybody ever hear of leprosy? It's in the Bible.
Yeah.
And so look it up, you'll find out. And skin is like all boils, and it's all kinds of infection. It's called a staph infection. What it is it's a blood infection, and the only way for the infection to escape is go through the skin, and it creates boils, not just a pimple, but a big boil. And they're like, he's washing the leper's feet, and I'm like, what? So I went over, and as I was going close, I could hear him going, come on, who's the next? Who's next? Who's next? Who's next? And when I got there's about 25 or 35 people standing around. And as I got there, I looked, and he's on the ground on his knees with a basin of water, a couple towels. I have no idea where he got anything. And there's a leper with his feet, and he's washing the feet of these people. And my heart just broke. I was like, oh God. If I've ever seen somebody that's Christ, it's in this moment. I'm like, Andrew, he goes, I know, PR. Just let me do my thing. I said, you all right? I'm all right. Next, he washed like 35 to 40 lepers' feet. Gets done, tears coming down. He's like, how's that feel? Is that feeling okay for you? I'm just trying my best. They're like, man, this is amazing. They're crying. He's talking about Jesus. He gets done. They do something with the basin. He comes over, and he just collapsed in my arms. No gloves, no nothing. I was like, oh my gosh. And he collapsed in my arms, and I'm like, Andrew, I'm just so proud of you. And here's what he says. He's a junior in high school. Here's what he says. He says, Pastor Rand, you have taught us, like any other youth pastor, about what to do for the things of God. But this week, you've taught me how to walk God. I'm only doing what you taught us. I'm only doing what we knew was poured in our hearts of the life of Jesus, because if Christ can do this, you told me I can do this, and I want to do this, and this is my walk. Wow. This is what God has for my life. And I've never been more proud of a kid in my life than I was in that moment. Because he was not just being the things of Jesus, he was Christ in flesh. He was not ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. He was not hiding behind any mask, because that's not how he lived. He was there in the flesh doing the work of the Lord. And so I'd ask you tonight, how do you see yourself? There's a couple of great questions. Let your walk be your talk. How do others see you? Now, wait a minute. I've been a clown all my life, and the people have always seen me funny and being a clown all my life. But they know this. They know one thing about my life, as they do your youth pastor and other youth pastors in the area, that when you get serious with God, you could be as clown as you want, but when you're serious with God, people know you're all about the business of kingdom. We don't preach as though we don't know. We preach as though we know. Like, I know. I came from a broken home. I watched my father's walk. I watched him talk. He was nothing like he said he was around people. I know, because he lived with me. My dad was that kind of guy that was not the kind of guy that was always impressive. There was stuff about my dad. I had a chance when I led my dad to the Lord, his life changed, his walk changed, his countenance changed. Why? Because of Jesus. Not because of who he was anymore, but who he was in. And I'm going to show and demonstrate that to you. 2 Corinthians chapter 3 is a great scripture. You don't have your Bible, maybe you have your phone, but I want to give you this. 2 Corinthians chapter 3, verse 1. Are we beginning to commend ourselves again, or do we need some people like letters of recommendation to you or from you? You yourselves are letters written on our hearts, known and read by everyone. You show that a letter from Christ, the result of your ministry, written not in ink, but with the Spirit of the living God. Not on tablets of stone, but on tablets of human hearts. Let me stop there a second. Not on tablets of stone, but on the Spirit of the living God, on human hearts. You know, when you walk into somebody's life and you communicate with somebody, in that moment you have a chance to walk in by the Spirit to change a life forever. Now, there's two ways you can change a life forever. Two ways. You're either going to change a life forever to where that person's either going to walk away from God. How many know what I'm talking? Is anybody following me so far? You're either going to change a life that they walk away from God, or you're going to be influential to where they change their life to follow you towards God. How are you walking? Because your walk is talking. You're not a walking taco. You're a walking, living, breathing vessel for Jesus Christ. And if you're not preaching Christ, then guess what? You're preaching something else. You're preaching. How many play sports here? Okay, how many do music here? How many are in the arts here? How many are gamers? I talked about the other night, gamers. Let me say this to you. You say to me, I can't preach like that. You say to PJ, we can't preach like that. But sure enough, you can preach your game. If I don't know how to play a game, I say to you, help me, describe it. You're going to be like, okay, here's what you do. Boom. You start preaching the very thing you love. You like arts? Who likes arts? You like arts? You like arts enough to where you start preaching about the arts. Because that's the thing that pulls you. I'm a sports guy. You can ask me anything about sports. I am going to talk to you about, I'm going to preach sports. So listen to me. We preach something, and we usually preach the very thing we like. If you're dating a new boyfriend, or you're dating a new girlfriend, you better believe you're going to preach that relationship for a long time until they hurt you. And then you're going to preach how nasty they are and how you want nothing to do with them. Now wait, how many follow me? You're going to preach about the goodness of everything given to your life, the vacation you went on, until mom and dad start having a relationship that's not right. And then they say things like, listen, honey, listen, son, we came to a place we're not going to be a part anymore. We're going to have to get divorced. And you're like, wait a minute. How did this happen? I thought you were getting along. They start preaching things to you. They start walking their talk that's totally different. Are you following me? So we don't preach about these things that are on stones of tablet. We preach about the things that are in our heart. It says there's such confidence we have through Christ before God. That we are not confident in ourselves to claim anything of ourselves, but we have confidence in God. I am confident in who God is. That means I'm confident in who God is. That means I can do it through God. He has made us competent as ministers of the new covenant, not by the letter but by the Spirit. See, we have a spirit. You have a soul. Man. Okay. Somebody said Carson Wentz is coming to like Atlantic Christian School. Oh, yeah. Okay. Some of you are like, man, the Eagles, man, Carson Wentz. Let me tell you something. Carson Wentz's story went a little bit south this year. He was the hottest quarterback in all the football until he got hurt. But he didn't win the Super Bowl. Now, wait a minute. He was on the team that won the Super Bowl. How many follow me? You're Philadelphia people, probably.
Yeah, no.
You don't go there. I'm just saying. I know you're Dallas. I'm Pittsburgh. But I loved it because they beat up New England. And here's the thing. You're going to listen to him speak if you go to Atlantic Christian, right? You're going to hear about a man that's sharing his testimony, but his life was radically changed through Jesus Christ. His walk changed. His football changed. His passion changed. His desires changed. Why? Because he met the Savior named Jesus. When you meet Jesus Christ, listen, you won't have to blame somebody else and use them as crutches. When my dad was drinking and my dad was crazy, my dad walked out. I was 8 years old when I accepted Christ. I'm like, dude, you crazy. Like, I'm not you. I'm not going to be you. I don't want to drink and smoke and choke it. I want to walk through life with grace and the passion of Jesus. Because it was written on my heart. And I thought, wait a minute, I could walk just like my dad. I could walk just like my father. And I could follow his footsteps. But you know what God said? You are not your father. You walk the steps I give you. Does anybody resonate with the Spirit? Are you getting this tonight? We're under all of creation. What a canopy. What a canopy. We're here with the fire. We're here as a youth ministry. You have all these games. Everything's happening. All this stuff's going on. Why? Because your youth pastor loves you. But when it comes down to the rubber hits the road, you have to know one thing. Who you living for? Because your culture, I don't care if it's a Christian school or secular school, there's a time and place where they say there is no Jesus. Let me just tie this up because I don't want to bore you. 1 Corinthians 6 says this. 1 Corinthians 6. But whoever is united with the Lord is one with him in spirit. Colossians 2 says this. So then, just as you received Jesus Christ your Lord, continue to live your lives for him, rooted and built up in him. Watch this. Strengthened in the faith as you were taught. Strengthened in the faith as you were taught. One thing I've watched in the last 3 years that I've known your pastor and Kate, your pastors, youth pastors, is this. They have tried to strengthen your walk in everything that they've taught. Everything is about Jesus. People ask me, how long have you been in ministry? I've been in ministry now 36 years. 36 years I've been walking with young people. I started in 1985. I coached college, soccer college, women's softball. I taught. I was going for education. I was in my master's program to teach. And I was working with youth ministries then before I started in 1985. When I got married, we moved to a place called Battle Creek. I've never looked back. The youth ministries we've built are amazing. The kids that we've had in our lives are amazing. They're still in touch with us. I see them all the time on Facebook. They communicate, they connect. I had one kid that finally got it. After all these years, I'll finish with this story. This kid never got anything in his spirit. He always blamed somebody else for his junk. He lived with his grandparents, and it was phenomenal because his grandparents had a lot of stuff. His grandparents were awesome. He was single-parented. He never knew his father, never met his father, because his father, the day he was born, the time he was born, 2 days later, his father was arrested for murdering somebody, was put in the state penitentiary, a prison. He hated the fact he never met him. He hated the fact that he didn't know him. He was raised by a mother that loved him and cared, and grandparents, but there was something still missing in his life. And it didn't matter how long he was in my youth ministry. He grew up when he was like 8 years old. He was in my youth ministry from 13 until about 17 years old, and then everything went south. He started hanging with the wrong people. He started smoking it. He started drinking it. He started getting crazy. He started doing B&Es, breaking and enterings. He started hurting people. He started getting into fights. I remember one time in the youth group, we were playing this stupid game about tennis shoes. You take one tennis shoe off, you throw the rest of the tennis shoes in a pile, and then you go, go! And everybody tries to dive, and they try to find their other pair of shoe so they can put their shoe on, and I won! Well, you gotta be kidding me. I had like 75 to 85 kids in my youth group and a whole pile of shoes. You know how chaotic that was. I'll never forget this kid. I was going in there and I was trying to roughhouse a little bit because I kind of like to do that a little bit. I'm not like your pastor. I'll confess something. I always tried to mess with the kids that mess with me.
That's pretty true.
So that's why I played this game. I might be 5'7", but I was lifting a lot more weights back then. I was a lot more stockier, and I'll tell you what, I could throw somebody across the room. And I remember getting this pile, and there was this kid, David, and that David was in there. I'm like, yeah, I'm going to get you back. He's in the pile, and he's fighting. All of a sudden, I'm like, bam, bam, jackrabbit. Oh, man. He's like, somebody's hitting me. I'm like, stop it over there. Quit hitting him. And I'm messing him up. I'm like, there's my shoe. Boom. There's my shoe. Boom. And I'm going crazy on him. He never understood what happened, never knew what happened, but it was a hilarious time, but he just simply never got it.
Can we just all wave hi to Jacob real fast?
Jake.
Jacob! Just park there. You've already bombed the message. Just park. Just park. You've already bombed the message.
Put it in reverse.
You have to win from us. I got the people almost ready to cry.
Jacob, put it in reverse.
Come on out!
Jacob! Okay, guys, get back in the group. Come on.
Okay, thanks. Welcome. Good to see you, man. All 6 foot something of you. All right, let me finish. So all of a sudden, I get a phone call from the jail, and they said, could you come down? This kid's in trouble. He just did a B&E, and he's 17 years old, and we're going to press charges like an adult. And I said, okay. So I went down to see him, and he laughed, and he just scoffed. About 3.5 months later, I got a phone call. They said, this is the hospital. Would you come up to the hospital because Mr. So-and-so has been beat up so severe, so bad that we're not sure he's going to make it. This is the grandfather of the kid. What had happened was this: David decided to break into his own place where he lived, his own grandparents' house, to steal with them for his drugs. He put a ski mask over his face with 2 other friends, and he beat his grandfather so bad that he broke ribs, punctured a lung, and put him in the hospital. I went up to see him, and the grandfather was coherent after about 3 or 4 hours, and I asked him what happened. He didn't tell me, and so did the grandmother. And he said, the only problem is I know who did it. I said, how you figure? He goes, well, they had ski masks on, but as they were leaving, David turns around and says, Grandpap, I'm sorry. Like, there's a bright kid. They take him to court, and he's tried as an adult now at 17 years old from not only B&E, but the grandfather died 2 weeks later.
Oh.
The grandmother had a broken arm, she had a broken collarbone, and she had what they call an orbital right here, your face, your eye socket. He had hit her so hard that he cracked her whole orbital, an arm, and a collarbone. The kid was higher than a kite on crack cocaine. He ended up in a prison, and I went to see him. And when I went to see him, they told me a story. They said, the kid you're going to see had a rude awakening 2 days ago. I said, how you figure? Well, what happened was we were doing roll call, and as we were doing roll call, we would say, David Jones, here. Okay, let's do this again. David Jones, here. What's up? Here. I was like, what is going on here? What this kid did not know, the very thing he hated was the very thing he became. And his walk took him from what he did, 1 cell from the Father that he never met. You get this? He, for the first time, met his Father 1 cell from his. The very person he hated all his life, the very person he never met, he ended up in the same place. What's your walk like? What? Come on, does anybody get this? What is your talk like? Because the very thing that you hate, you will follow. The very thing you love, you will learn to lead. The very thing you love God, you'll lead God. You love your sport, you'll lead in your sport. You love your games, you'll lead in your games. You hate, you're bitter, you're angry, you will follow that the rest of your life, and that will catch you and it will hurt you. It's time we fall in love with Jesus. I would never want to see you in the same place. When I saw David, when I went to visit him, he could not stop crying. What did I do? Where have I been? What happened in my life? But the story doesn't stop there, because what happened was, I didn't know this, but all these years later, he's in my book. This kid's journey is in my book that I wrote, Irrelevant Youth Ministry, because this kid was a has-been at one time. But here's the glorious thing about God. I've been gone from that church for 30 years. I just found out last year that he got out of prison After 30 years, he finally got out. He not only radically turned his life around to Jesus in his 5th year in prison, that he started leading prisoners to Jesus. And I didn't know this testimony. I never heard this on the story. They said, Pastor Rand, you would not believe this kid that was a tyrant, this kid that walked wrong, this kid that walked sideways, this kid that walked with nothing of God, you would not believe what he's doing for God. So something, somewhere, he finally figured it out. What is your walk like? Well, how do people know you? How do they recognize you? What are they saying about you? Trust me. Guard your mouth. Guard your heart. Guard your spirit. Father, I thank you for this time together. I thank you for PJ letting me come, for Kate letting me come, for the leaders in this youth ministry letting me share my heart. God, thank you for this bonfire. It feels so much better right now. The wind's dying down. The wind of our heart is breathing because we're out in your nature. We're underneath your canopy. God, what do you have for us tonight? Like, what do you have for us tonight, God? Do we get that we can walk different? Do we get that we can talk different? Do we get that we don't have to follow the crowd? We can be different for the gospel of Jesus. And even though we come from different backgrounds, God, you've chosen us for such a time as this. It's time to get busy. I don't want to be stuck before I start preaching. I want to preach now. I want to preach now. Whether we're preaching our games or preaching our life, I want to preach Jesus right now. I want God to see me right now. I want God to use me right now. Bless these young people. Encourage these young people. Empower these young people to walk the Spirit of God in their life, to let their walk be their talk.
Amen.
Before it comes out of their mouth, let people know that they love Jesus. I thank you, God, in your precious name. In your precious name.
Hey guys, I want to give a round of applause for Randy real fast. Randy's going to be here. He's going to be here until Sunday. And if you guys have anything going on, whether it was something he talked about, something that else is on your mind, Randy is an awesome resource. I know that sometimes it's difficult to talk to someone that's here. Well, the beautiful thing is that Randy is leaving. He's heading back, and sometimes it's cool to talk to someone that you know that isn't going to be here for a while. So if there's something you need to talk about, Randy and that bald head right there. That's right now. All right, and so tonight has been an awesome night, man. We've had everything from the best stage design we can ask for.
I know, that's a beautiful car.
Jacob said he didn't see us. When did you finally see us? Where were you at?
I thought you guys were inside.
All I say is this, I'm like, there's no way he's coming over here, and he rolls straight up, and I'm like, so all I'm going to say is this, our sermon series is called Wrecked, and we brought a car on stage that obviously has seen better days. By the way, this car is awesome if you've ever been inside of it. But anyways, this is what's going to happen for the rest of the night. We're going to throw one more pallet on this fire. We literally used up all the pallets. Who in here is freezing right now?
Yeah!
Spot close to the fire. We're throwing another one on. We got s'mores.
Yeah, that's what the fire looks like right
now. Inside's open, 9 squares open. Thank you guys for coming out. Hey guys, wait a minute. Take your chairs. Take your chairs back. Take your chairs back.
Alright guys, this is going to be the last video for today. As you can see, we have everybody here. And that'll be it. Peace out guys. Bye.